Okay.
Hello, I'm Deacon Patrick Jones, and with me is,
I'm Father Kyle Ingels.
and we're here to make this up as we go along, is what we what we keep talking about. We've been talking back and forth about how can we help people connect, how can we help people in parishes connect with resources, and how can we share the light of Christ with each other, and encourage others to do the same. And so we're going to do, there's an idea that the saints don't just pop up individually throughout history. They often come in clusters. So you think about, we recently had St. Patrick, the Feast of St. Patrick. Many of his family became saints. You have Therese the Little Flower. Many of her family were saints. And that happens all throughout church history. And those clusters, our family was talking at one point, and we decided to start calling them halos. So we started the really simple idea that any group of faithful gathering together and intentionally sharing the journey of how do we run towards Christ, to borrow the phrase that St. Benedict uses. How do we run towards Christ together? That's what these saint halos have done throughout history, and that's what they can do for us. So, Father Kyle, you and I haven't talked a whole lot. We've interacted mostly by email. And so part of the fun of this will be us getting to show what does this look like as we go along, and what are some of the core questions that addressing a pandemic when the normal avenues of shepherding are limited. And so we wanted to start with the first topic for this, and my phone keeps going to sleep, so my topics keep disappearing on me. Technology is great until it isn't. So our first topic is Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. And we're a people in darkness who have seen a great light. I can only imagine that, Father Kyle, as you're struggling and striving for how do we shepherd when we can't be within 6 feet of each other, and we can't have more than 5 of us gathering in one place within 6 feet of each other. How are you experiencing and sharing Christ's light?
Well, it's a challenging time, as you said. I mean, I think that one of the great joys of Easter is reflecting on the light of Christ. And I know for a lot of people, myself included, it's easier to see that light or feel that light when we're kind of all connected, and when the weather's nice and springtime's coming. And it's kind of hard sometimes the last few days to break out of the Lenten mentality when it's snowing and we're separated. And so, one of the things I've been trying to do, and sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, but I really feel like I'm trying to do as best I can. And one of the things I've been doing since March 14th is offering Mass every day on social media. So I'm not real tech savvy, unfortunately, which is a real hindrance right now. And I don't have a lot of great technology here at my house, but I've just been using my cell phone, and I've been using Instagram because that's the platform that most of my college students are using. So there's other ways to do it. I mean, Facebook, YouTube, other media that are probably maybe more effective at reaching a larger audience. But I've been using my phone to live stream Mass every day from my chapel here at my house. It's somewhat challenging because it's just me, so I have to kind of make sure the phone is propped up the right way and all those things. But that's been kind of a neat way to connect. I mean, I've been connecting with a lot of people really around the world. I have friends who live in Portugal and friends who live in Italy. They've been watching Mass. I have lots of friends who live on the East Coast because I used to live in Maryland and Washington, D.C. for a long time. So a lot of them have been watching, and a lot of the students from UCCS and Colorado Springs have been watching. So that's been one thing I think that has really been important for a lot of people, is to stay connected to the light of Christ through the sacraments. And it's hard because we can't physically receive the Eucharist. Most of us can't. I'm very lucky that I can say Mass at home and receive the Eucharist. But the people watching the feed can't physically receive our Lord, but they can spiritually receive him. And I know that's helping a lot of people at least feel more connected right now.
And that, I've got brain injury, and the one of the things with that is the inability to, aphasia is the word. I can't always remember words, but my wife laughs at me because I remember aphasia. What's the term that the bishops have been using for that? It's basically a spiritual communion.
Oh, spiritual communion.
And one of the things that I read that I found profoundly beautiful, especially since, because of my brain injury, I've needed to fast from Eucharist for various reasons at various times, being unable to get to Mass for those reasons. And I lost my train of thought. Let's see if I can find it again. Spiritual communion. It was St. Augustine, in his last few weeks of life, intentionally fasted from the Eucharist so that he was more hungry for Christ. And there's an amazing counterintuitive beauty to that. And for me, this past Good Friday, which of course the whole church fasts from Christ one day a year, that was brought home of just how hungry we become, so that we're not taking the light of Christ and the body and blood of Christ for granted when we can receive it again. And that hunger growing in us is an invitation to a deeper spirituality, as well as the isolation, and we'll get into that in future episodes. As families struggle and strive to be in isolation together, often in ways for lengths of time, doing things they've never done, tensions can build. But how do we bring our faith into daily family life is a fantastic opportunity to discover what does it look like to be domestic church. And so we'll get into that in future episodes. So this will be the thing the newscasters do when they tease the stories coming up. So we'll see you next time on whatever we eventually end up calling this. I'm Deacon Patrick, and
I'm Father Kyle.
And we're making this up as we go along. May God startle you with joy.